Welcome to the fifth edition of the Star Fox Media Small Business Sit Down. Today, our guest is Christopher Williams of Princebury Productions and Media. He's the managing director, and Princebury Productions and Media is a film production company that focuses on the business side of film and helping filmmakers achieve what their dreams are. So, Christopher, thanks for sitting down with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure, Jeff. Been looking forward to this for at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, for at least 2 weeks. Well, Christopher and I have worked together for like 8 years now.
8 years plus, yes.
So we've already been acquainted. So I know a little bit more than the audience will at this point. But I think that it would be really nice to start with your background. I mean, I know there's a lot to talk about there. So I know it's going to be a lot. But how did you get started in film specifically, or actually maybe we should probably take a few steps back before that. What was it like growing up? Where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in 18. Now I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia, the son of a pastor and a wonderful mother. And they had 7 boys, and I'm third from the top. I went to schools there in Virginia Beach, integrated schools in Virginia back in 1963. I was raised in staunch segregation. It was a wonderful experience, and finished the integrated high school. Finished the high school, ended up as president of my senior class. That was remarkable, being that it was primarily what I call gringos, Anglos, and so it made a lot of news in Virginia back in that time because this is historical. I mean, I was threatened by the KKK, and a lot of stuff was happening. All the marches and riots back then in the 60s. And Dr. King, Martin Luther King, was a personal friend of my father and my uncle's. Actually, he used to stay at my uncle's house right down the street from where we lived. So we had a chance to see and chat with him. And that inspired me to do something, I think, different than the traditional schools. So I was fortunate enough to get into about 49 colleges and 4 Ivy League schools, and I went to Brown University, graduated from there with a degree in economics and math, and then I went to law school at the University of Virginia and finished that, and I'm licensed to practice. I'm retired as an attorney, but I'm licensed in Virginia, a few other places in California. And so primarily I served as an attorney, but my previous background involved I'm retired military, a former law enforcement officer, things of that sort. And I was stationed here in San Diego and decided to stay because of why?
Weather?
Weather. Weather, and my wife's had family here, and my family, we were all over, including Hawaii, which is the other place we spent a lot of time. So that's about it. Started a law firm. Well, I worked for a few law firms since I had to start my own law firm, and it just went on from there. Built one of the largest, at that time, law firms they used to use. Like the governor would say, hey, it was ethnically identifiable, is to call the word. It's not a minority law firm. I strongly dislike that. I would have people call all the time, hey, we're here, you're a great black attorney. I said, take the adjective out.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a great attorney, I'll do the interview. If not, then pass. So I helped set up a lot of those programs, and we took off. The firm, I ended up as the bond counsel for the city of San Diego and the county. And so all of those bond issues on the ballot when you vote, that's what we used to do. Very complex, boring, but it paid well.
Man, it sounds kind of interesting to me. How did you get started in law? When you were growing up, did you know you wanted to be a lawyer? Did your parents talk you into it, or did you just kind of fall into it?
Well, actually, that is interesting. My little brother was a lawyer. I was supposed to be a doctor. I was pre-med, a chemical engineering major at Brown, but I didn't like cutting up cadavers, so I switched to economics, and math was a big part of that. And then when I decided not to be a doctor, I got into med school, business school, and law school. I just applied everywhere after I graduated from Brown. And well, right? Law school work.
And at one point, you also were with the Navy during this. Did that have any impact on your decision to be a lawyer, or was the lawyering first and then you went into the Navy after that?
Well, I am, retired Navy, retired military, over 20 years, Vietnam era. Now, I got drafted in 1968.
So they made the decision for you.
Well, and I had a student deferment.
Mhm.
And because I'm going to Ivy League school, I'm supposed to be really smart, supposed to be. And, and as a consequence, after we finished Brown, my service, I did have a service commitment, and I wanted to fulfill that commitment. And the Navy needed lawyers. And I said, hey, we'll send you to law school, but I'll pay for it. I said, well, I can do that. And that's how it all started. And I ended up as a Navy JAG and completed my active duty, et cetera, and retired in the 90s out of the Naval Reserve at that point.
Without jeopardizing your top secret clearance or anything like that, is there anything you can tell us what you did as JAG? Did you who you worked with and things like that?
Well, I worked for the chief of naval operations. I worked for a lot of stars. We used to call them, admirals and generals. And right, I don't have a top secret clearance now.
Okay.
I still have a classified clearance, but we worked on a lot of things, and I've been assigned to aircraft carriers, submarine bases and stuff, and a lot of different ships, and Special Operations Command as a desk jockey, and a lot of things. And I've been, again, a police officer involved in security at all different levels, and have a wealth of experience. I'll put it like that.
So you were a JAG officer, and then after that you went and started did you work for another law firm then before you started your own? Is that how that?
Yes, I worked for a few law firms. I mean, some major and smaller, and decided to strike out on my own with a couple of partners.
What made you make that decision? How did you decide, you know what, it's time, I got to start my own thing?
Well, I thought I was smarter than the rest of the guys, and I wanted to develop a specialty. A lot of folks at that time, I had what you call doors closed in my face, because a lot of firms did not want someone of my ethnic persuasion. I've had that happen. Said, you don't fit the color scheme, you're not going to be invited to things that we're invited to, the lawyers were invited to. I used to joke, well, I'm going to parties that you're not going to be invited to also. And, back in the 70s, it could be very tense. A very good friend of mine became the first partner at a major law firm in the state in California. That's a biggie. But I wanted to be a corporate attorney, finance, and there were very few doors open. In corporations, now in a law firm, everybody wanted me to be a litigator, because I had worked in the district attorney's office and been a cop and all this stuff. And they said, you got all this experience.
It does sound like a natural transition, to go from policing and working with, law enforcement, things like that, to doing, more criminal justice side law. But you wanted to do corporate finance and all of it.
Well, I wanted to do a $1 billion deal. That's really it. And my father taught us, he had 7 boys, no girls, and each one of us, he gauged to be in a certain profession. One was going to be an accountant, CPA, that's what he did. And then another was going to be a minister, which followed my father. And I was supposed to be a doctor. The next guy was, my other brother's an architect. The next one was going to run the family's businesses, which is what he did, a lot of apartment buildings. The sixth was going to be a lawyer, which is what he did, Ivy Leaguer, top of his class, the same thing. And my little brother was going to be a general, military top cadet. And unfortunately, he had the same problem I had. We had heart issues. 4 of us had heart issues, which sort of sidelined our careers early because of that.
Yeah, I think in the military, a lot of health things kind of put limits on what you're allowed to do, right?
Exactly, and that changed my career. That's one of the reasons that the Navy offered me a JAG, the lawyer position they needed, because I had an accident and flunked the physical. And to stay, I should say, act active duty regular Navy.
Yeah. So from your being a corporate finance attorney and running your own practice, what kind of law did your practice focus on mostly?
Well, my specialty, corporate finance and banking and corporate securities, just called it finance, corporate finance. Now, bonds essentially is an IOU for a company, and stock is as a security is just you're an owner, you're part of the owner of the company, and people appreciate that, and you share in the profits. But companies borrow money all the time. Municipalities, states borrow money. They do it through a vehicle called a bond. And so, in layman terms, it's just an IOU. If it's guaranteed by some assets, it's a secured bond. If it's not guaranteed by assets, it's sort of what they call a junk bond, just based on whether or not you have a good credit rating.
I'm sure that junk bonds are something that a lot of people have fond memories of from 2008. So,
well, in the 1990s, the whole Milliken, just a whole lot of things happened, and even the crisis in Orange County with their investments back in the 90s, and worked on a lot of stuff. And our firm became the top 25 in the country, 25th in bond work. It was phenomenal. But representing California, the state of California, several municipalities and all the water departments and dams, everything schools, school bonds, housing bonds, we did them all. And you work with all the major firms on Wall Street. I worked with Goldman Sachs, Lehman's gone, Bear Stearns, Morgan, you name it, we did work because they would sell, the bonds. And I was fortunate. I convinced the city of San Diego, instead of going to New York or San Francisco to close the bond deals, I said, I have this beautiful office in La Jolla. Why don't you just close the deals here? You can save all this money, and I'll give you a better deal. And that's how I started. And next thing, that's how I started. But then SDG&E, energy companies, gave us, they use a lot of bonds too, the finance infrastructure. They gave us a huge opportunity, because every time you pay your utility bill, part of that money goes back to pay the bonds. Every time a plane lands at Lindbergh, part of the landing fee goes to bonds. That's what we did, paperwork. But like I said, it paid well.
Yeah. And then you ended up working with a little bit on the entertainment side. This is like kind of slowly the transition with working with athletes and
yes.
And so how did you make that transition?
Well, a lot of members of my family played pro ball. I mean, pro basketball, football. My brother was a great track star. Actually, 4 of my brothers were state champions. 2 were in 2 NCAA, and 1 went to the Olympic trials before he got hurt. He would have taken a medal. And so this, at the 72 Olympics, but he got hurt. The Munich Olympics, anyway, where they killed some of the Israelis. But so we had all these things happening, and all my family, I mean, we were just all in the sports. I mean, I played a little sports myself too. And as a consequence, they would come to me, Christopher, you're a lawyer, can you help us? And we knew a lot of players, and one of my partners played pro basketball, and the doors open. Another was a tennis player, another was a hockey player, and some of the attorneys at the firm. So it became known. I went to the University of Virginia, which is known as, again, for sports law, IMG. A lot of things came out of that. And it was sort of a transition. And we had a firm, one of my first companies actually was a sports agency firm that we sold to another big LA firm. And because of that, we had a lot of players. And I'm not going to run through all the players, but I know a lot of guys.
Yes, attorney-client privilege.
Right. Well, these guys burn through their money. Everybody wants to be in what? Movies and make music, or at least have their girlfriends make music, help them. So they would come to their attorney. And that's how we got into this, from the sports management to music and entertainment. And we work with a lot of music companies, record companies, and I'm not going to run through all the names here. And then we did some work for some of the film companies, because we help finance, because again, we're finance attorneys. I mean, the firm you asked earlier, that's primarily what we did, finance and banking. Then we did real estate and a lot of corporate work. and minor litigation for the corporations. But the to do movies are done how? Primarily through finance. Again, putting the deals together. There's an equity participation, but most of the money comes from banks again, or investors, and we're the guys who do the paperwork and set it up. We had a client here in Southern Cal. He made a lot of movies that went straight to DVD, action, karate, which is what a lot of us in, because my buddies were all martial artists and MMA guys. And you're supposed to say yes, because you still look like you can do
Yes,
this.
of course.
I used to box. And as a consequence of that, right, it's just, it kept growing. And we used all these, and this guy kept making all these straight to DVD, and you would know a lot of the names, kickboxing movies, like in Asia, the Chinese made all these kung fu movies back then. I mean, so we made all these kickboxing movies, and it just took off. It took off, the financing, working with the studios, and that's how it started. And eventually I set up the San Diego Entertainment and Sports Lawyers Association. We did a lot of work in San Diego. We helped set up the film commission here and so on. And there was a lot of business here back in the 80s. And we represented a lot of directors, quite a few writers, and who wrote the scripts, all those things in Hollywood. And people do not know, a lot of second-tier folks all live here in Rancho Santa Fe, Del Mar on the ocean. That's a lot better than L.A., so they were here, and we represented quite a few.
So it sounds like you almost transitioned into entertainment, like through circumstances, like just how the opportunities presented themselves, and you kind of transitioned slowly over, like, some time. So how did that turn into starting Princebury, the production company?
Well, the main focus for Princebury at the time, I had been working in the industry, and I had retired from the practice of law due to a couple of heart attacks. But I had a lot of friends in the industry, and we started a company making movies. We had one company, and then we went public with Consolidated Pictures Group, and thus started launching it. But like everything, you got to make some money doing this, or you can lose a lot of money also. But dealing with Hollywood is difficult, extremely difficult, especially when you're a Christian and they have their own views about things. So the acrimony, the problems that created for someone like myself, and I could tell you some stories not here, about, people own studios. And I've been to every studio in LA, every major, in the executive lunchrooms, the whole 9 yards. So I understand how it works. And my view was to make more family-friendly films, and more films that would honor, American heritage and our patriotism and things of that sort. So we started our own company to help move those movies along, and that's how the idea of Princebury started. It was, had a different name before, but one of the other partners in the company picked that name and stuck, and we said, we'll go with that. Yeah, he said it sounds very British, something. So
yes, indeed. Sounds regal.
Yes.
Professional. Filmmaking is a very interesting subject, because there's a lot of people out there that have film ideas, have movie ideas, have things that they'd like to do, but don't really know where to get started. So as someone who works in the film industry and putting these packages together, do you have any recommendations for someone who wants to make a film?
Well, it depends on the type of film. I mean, anyone can make a film. Mm-hmm. And I think you made a few yourself, right?
I might have.
But the key is to make a film. What's the message? See, we have a message film fund that we're raising money for. Films have to have a message. The ones that have a message live forever. People want to watch them, and you see that. And we joke with guys a friend of mine, for instance, owns all those aged John Wayne films, right? And he's still making a lot of money because people like to watch that John Wayne. Now, today, you're going to have people watching Clint Eastwood movies because of what it represents, especially for guys, cowboys like me. So it's that niche. So right now, we're trying to get the niche. Now, with message films, you want to have nice, wholesome message, something because people go to movies. They watch a movie for two things, I think. One, they want to feel good. And the second part is, after they see the movie, they want to feel good. Yes. And you want to lead them down a path without telling them anything. And I said, with a hardcore message, but allow their minds to really think about it and to say, oh, it fits with their own perception of what the film should be. You want to intertwine that. That's how really the movie viewer will latch onto it and come back and watch it. I mean, I have a movie I really love. I've seen it 275 times, right?
Number keeps growing every time we talk. Must keep watching it.
Yeah, but it's a cult film among, especially cops, ex-cops. So we watch it together, and some of the guys drink beer, and I drink, lemonade. But it works. With a little tequila in it, but that's a joke. So the message is the key, right? And that's what I've been trying to do. And we now, people in what they call Hollywood. They realize that's what works. Do you make Christian films? And I was known in the early days as a Christian, right? There were a handful of us. And, it was very difficult doing that. 40 years ago, no. But today, or even 20 years ago, yes. So right now, like I said, our focus is on doing message films with a positive, wholesome message. And that can include action films and good guys win. And, historically, my job was to, change people's hearts, not take out bad guys. Of course, I have taken out bad guys. But
sometimes taking out the bad guys can be pretty inspirational as well.
Right. It's called arresting them and letting and letting the
justice system work.
Yeah. Exactly. Not what some people would say.
Yeah. Taking them out back. But so, I mean, that's where, with inspiring people as a goal for a film, like, is there multiple genres that can you do all the genres with that, or do you have to kind of stick to this traditional like Christian film that other people make all the time?
No, you do not have to stick to quote a Christian film. That's genre. I can do thrillers. But I don't do horror. I don't know what a zombie is. It's a zombie, and you can get people make these silly movies, but they can make a zombie movie for $25,000 or $100,000, and then make $10 million. So they'll make these. What's the message in a zombie movie? I remember the first one, Night of the Living Dead, and I was at Brown when it came out, and I thought that was weird because for the fraternity they made us watch it. And it was scary, but it made no sense. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to be involved in a movie that's nonsense. The way I see it, right? I mean, I work with people like different folks, even putting Bible stories again on video, like someone did 30 years ago, teaching our kids, and there's still people buying those and using them today. Upgraded. So a market for 30 years, 40 years. Mm-hmm. That's what you really are trying to do, right? And that's the same thing. And I'm not making a movie about Roy Rogers, but that, again, he was a good guy, hero movie, and that's what you want to, but he's my expectation is that's what you want to do, right? Something that will last and have that message, the positive message. So yes, whether it's a Western, I love Westerns, a war movie, like, for instance, Mel Gibson with Hacksaw Ridge told a wonderful story. Amen. Same thing with Mel and his Braveheart. Same thing with Passion of the Christ. So you have movies that it could be an R rating, but they're giving that message too. And they were blockbusters, right? Even American Sniper. Some of the guys that worked on that, right? And how, they said, hey, this guy, I think Spielberg was in it before, and then there's somebody else in it. And finally they got Clint Eastwood. And what happened, right?
Yeah,
and
rest is history.
Everyone I knew in Hollywood said it would not work. It would be a flop. No one was going to watch it. But what they always forget, when I say they, I'm talking about the folks in Hollywood, your traditional movie control.
The people who work for run the majors.
Right. And they said, we're not going to be involved in that. But what happened?
They blew up?
It hit. They forget about, which you hear frequently outside, the flyover states, the core America. They think only of East Coast, West Coast. Mm-hmm. They forget about, right, what we call the 180 million people in the middle. Mm-hmm. Right? There's 100 billion on the East Coast, but we're in the middle, and we have a certain type of core values. And we look at a hero movie. So I like hero movies. And that's what we try to make also. So when you ask the question, do I like comedy? Yes, we can make a funny comedy without being, over the top gross and stuff.
Making people feel better walking out of the movie theater than before they came in.
Right? Because, for instance, Blindside, I viewed that maybe 3 times before it came out. And it had to be, recut. Like a couple we've been on, we recut. The last version, is probably the 7th cut of the picture. And there's always the director's cut, producer's cut, and so on. Well, Blindside, for instance, when the originally movie came out, it was going to be about the kid and the football player, right? But after reviewing it, and they made it for kids. Well, suggestions not just all mine. Okay, so gosh, this movie should be about. It was a family, about bringing this young man from this horrid background into a Christian family, and they returned. It was a Christian family. And one of the things, they had a couple of football coaches in the movie. I said, no, bring all of them. 40 coaches in the movie. Everybody had a cameo. Why? Because they all have a following. And they'll come watch a movie. And it had a very positive message. And no one thought Sandra Bullock would do anything in this movie. Because one of the original cuts, she was, for instance, hitting a guy on the rear end. She had put the kind of frisky cheerleader thing. And not being just a good mother image, right? But what worked?
I think the relationship between her and the player.
Football player,
yeah,
and the mother image, and people felt that in their hearts, right? So what did she do? She won an Academy Award, right? The movie was.
It's like magic,
right? Who was it? That's in your moment. The company made it.
Oh, was it?
Because they also did Blade Runner.
Alcon?
Alcon.
Yeah.
Right? And the guys, we've talked to all of them. And over the top. They just did not anticipate it.
Right.
That's the point. Those are the kind of pictures you want to make, at least for me.
No, that makes sense. And so what do you think the future is for Princebury? What are the next steps?
Well, with the changing dynamics in the industry, for instance, with streaming, everything else, there are more opportunities now we can see with the streaming as opposed to being locked into theaters. And the theaters, again, it's just a controlled industry. But we know a few people, I know from Regal and other folks. But now with this COVID-19, theaters are not going to survive as we know it. They were going away anyway. Now we have the streaming, all this new technology. So movies with a different flavor and lots of options. So, and to that extent, what type of movies can you make? You can make them a lot easier. You're not controlled in terms of distribution. You can get them out there in front of folks. But 2, streaming is expensive. So you do everything now with that in mind. And how do you make your money? Because ticket sales, as we know it, are no longer here, right?
Right. And I mean, if without the theaters, I think that was a lot of time where films bring in their first big round of funds to repay their investors and stuff, is that theatrical film, like the theatrical showing. And also being in theaters is a good marketing push for you, because then it's like, everyone kind of sees your name up on in the lights on the theater. They see your posters everywhere. There's a place to go watch it. So they're kind of doing a little bit of the marketing for you. So with streaming being the main platform, is that going to make things a little more difficult when it comes to like trying to get your film known and that people even know it exists?
Yes. Well, the thing is, if the streaming company doesn't like you, for instance, I'm not talking about Netflix, but the people at Netflix, quite a few do not like the way I position myself. So will I get an audience? But if you have a winning film, buy it. But now these companies are financing the pictures themselves. Will they finance this picture? Depends on their audience. But again, there are more options, right? With all these other streaming companies around, there's just more options. So the question is here, do you have the money? In the past, when I would go to LA, they say, I said, but I'm not asking you for money. You control distribution. We already have our own money. And that's what people have to understand too. Well, you finance movies. Yes, but movie has to make sense. We like to get our money back.
Yeah, people that put money into films, it's not usually a donation, right?
Right. You're not giving it away.
Right.
That's the most challenging thing for people to understand. So now that the streaming companies are financing movies themselves, How many times they can short as many times as they want to if they have a large enough audience. That's a control. Now, how do we get around that control unless you own your own streaming company with our audience? So what some folks I know are concentrating on is trying to get enough money together to buy one of those streaming companies. Then you can have more pictures that reflect your own values and mores, that kind of thing. So,
it's interesting because one of my favorite things about streaming back, like when we were starting this 8 years ago, was that the gatekeepers and the people that kind of were in charge of what films came out was the major studios and their distribution wings in the theaters. And I looked at the streaming platforms as the competition that, we don't have to use the major studios anymore. We can make our money on streaming. We can do that. But if the theaters go away, maybe they all of a sudden just assume the role of the gatekeeper and everything all of the bad things that come with that. Unless, of course, you make your own that, can compete.
Exactly. And that's what is happening now, right? Because, Princebury now has been involved in a few documentaries. I understand and appreciate you can make it for the right price. We're not Michael Moore, and we're not doing that kind of stuff over the top. And personally, this is me talking, his stuff makes no sense, and most of us lies. But I know that I got a particular hit because I worked on a film about a sitting president and the previous president, and you get attacked because of that. And working with Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh D'Souza got attacked, I got attacked, and because Dinesh asked me, we all went to the same church, we knew each other. He said, well, we're the same complexion as the former president, and we're all Ivy Leaguers. Come on, help me put your name on it. I said, hey, I don't need to get shot.
Yeah.
Or attacks, whatever.
I'm sure it's not exactly the most thing. Like if making a documentary about a sitting president, especially if it's not necessarily flattering, is probably not something that gets you a lot of political points.
Exactly, and you become a target, a serious target, and a lot of things happen. I never put my name on movies. I could care less. And Chris Williams is like John Jones. So I don't need the press, and I don't want it. I don't need the attention. So it's not my focus. I'm like some regular guy, like playing with my grandkids, and they like to joke about it. And, Papa, this person. Yeah, it's no big deal. They think it's exciting. Point is, now we're at a turning point in the industry. So having a streaming company in order to get the message out is key. Princebury, okay, you still have all this television and everything else. We're focused more, like to answer your question, on doing the right kind of docs. But we will work in conjunction with some other folks in association where we're working on about the half dozen pictures. But action films, patriotic films, that makes sense. Okay? So yes, that's where I see a direction. Like I said earlier, my client who worked on all these kickboxing action movies, we should joke, he put one in the can for $2 million. But he would sell them for $6 million. Well, let's just say $4 million. Okay, so he made $2 million profit. But the theaters in Europe would buy it, right? And they would make extra $7 million on profit. I said, well, why don't you do it? He said, no, because this way I'm guaranteed a profit. I'll go make more and sell them. It's no headaches. They're dealing with all those headaches. So we set up the right type of program that works for our company, which is making it and then, for instance, giving it to another distributor, them to push it out. As long as we can make the right type of material that appeals to our core audience. Right?
Definitely. Well, thank you for taking the time to sit down with us today. And if you want to reach out, Princebury.com, so PRANCEBURY.com, and make sure to support all their films that come out, and make sure to like them on Facebook and follow. And if you need any marketing assistance, then check us out at www.starfox.media. Right, thanks.
Thank you, Jeffrey.